Happy Friday, PSWs and friends across Canada and, of course, Ontario. Welcome to PSW Podcast. My name is Miranda Romanowicz. I'm the CEO of the Ontario PSW Association and host of PSW Podcast, where we come to you guys live every single Friday at 11 a.m. and where we talk about all the good, the bad, and the in-betweens, which a lot of you guys seem to enjoy. Today, I am actually really excited. You're joined yet again by the CEO of HSCPOA, which is the Health and Supportive Care Providers Oversight Authority here in Ontario. Mr. Trevor Lee has joined us yet again to talk about HSCPOA, the regulation of personal support workers. What does it mean? And kind of just bust out all the myths and all the falsehoods that are being communicated out there to PSWs. There's a lot of confusion. Trevor does not come to this without knowledge of PSWs or even any knowledge around healthcare. Trevor was, for most of the 20 years, he was at the Elliott Community, was the CEO. And so he worked very closely with the front line. So he understands personal support workers, which is something that we definitely are thrilled to have a CEO who's doing the regulation of PSWs who actually understands the PSW role. So Trevor, thank you so much for joining us here again today.
My pleasure, Miranda. So pleased to be here.
So we're going to just get into it because, at OPSWA, we get a lot of questions, obviously, from PSWs surrounding the HSCPOA, the regulation of PSWs. There's a lot of confusion in the PSW world because, their uncles, friends, babysitters, fish's friend decided to tell them something that they now deem true, and it's not true, and it just causes anxiety, it causes divide amongst the PSWs, and that's another reason I'm glad you're here today, so we can clear all of that up. So to start this off, why don't you tell us about HSCPOA and your role at the authority?
Great. I'm happy to do that. And just to put some lead up to this, this is my second opportunity to be a guest on your podcast, and I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity. And I know that we're all working towards our town hall that will be on January the 28th. We have two sessions. So if you have information that you need on that, either through HSCPOA's informational content or through OPSWA's content, certainly be interested in seeing those individuals register, and we can address questions broadly at those two town halls. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that. So HSCPOA is an organization that's created by the Government of Ontario to provide public protection and oversight and accountability for PSWs operating in the province of Ontario. Its main mandate, embedded right in the legislation, right in the Memorandum of Understanding, and both of those documents are actually available on the HSCPOA website if anyone has an interest in seeing the actual commitment that the province has made, is to introduce the oversight and accountability, but with a purposeful intent not to disrupt the valued and important services that PSWs provide across the province in their varying aspects, whether it's long-term care, retirement, hospital, in the working in the community-based services, or any other of those parameters of PSW services that support the many services that Ontarians receive in healthcare. So commitment, public practice, and public protection, and oversight and accountability, but really to understand that we don't want to disrupt it. So this is voluntary registration. The language in the Act does speak to a future point of considering mandatory registration. We do look to the province for the direction on when and how that would actually come into effect. The government was also very specific to not have fees associated with registrations for HSCPOA. So HSCPOA registrants, the only cost that they would incur, and I want to be clear because some people have said, well, you say there's no cost, but there is. So there is a slight cost if you don't have a current criminal reference check within the last 12 months that can be supplied. We do offer through HSCPOA's registration process an application that can be completed online and submitted through a provider, Certain, CERTN. I think the cost of that is around the $24 mark. For an applicant. That's the only cost that is incurred. But again, if you have a criminal reference check that is recent within the last 12 months, you can do that. You can submit with that. There are 4 pathways for registration. And I know that, Miranda, you're going to have a question for me later in this podcast to talk about some of the specifics of that. but I'll just lay them out. They're quite simple. Employed as a PSW in Ontario as Pathway 2. That is a legacy pathway where individuals who have a varying degree of qualifications, whether it's education prior to 2014, whether it's education that is acquired on the job at their employer or with their employer, those individuals, the legacy pathways to provide an opportunity for them to register as a HSCPOA registrant with us through an application process where we can consider all of the credentials of their specific situation, and then we evaluate and most likely would be granting registrant status if they meet all of the qualifications that we're looking for in the Pathway 2. A lot of your members in OPSWA and a lot of the PSWs in the province of Ontario are probably looking more carefully at Pathway 1, which is Ontario PSW Educated. In that, I would consider to be the most simplistic method of registering. You need your transcript, you need your certificate of completion of your program, recognized program, and you need that criminal reference check that I mentioned. Again, if it's less than 12 months and it is meeting the credentials, there's no cost to that. Those three inputs into our registrant portal, and for most of those individuals, they're looking right into the registrant decision and then the registrant assignment with their HSCPOA registrant number. There is two other pathways that are a little bit more complex. Labor mobility picks up people coming in from BC, Alberta, and Nova Scotia, and also the one that is the competency assessment for Pathway 4, which are individuals who do not qualify for labor mobility trained outside of Ontario or internationally. There is a competency assessment process that we go through with those applicants to consider their qualifications for entry into the register. So that is really kind of the oversight of HSCPOA and its decision. I'm very pleased to be the CEO of the organization, and I'm working alongside some very passionate and invested individuals that our sole purpose is to try our very hardest to work closely with each individual PSW on their specific situations to come into the register experience. I know it can be daunting if you look at it to say, I didn't have to do this a couple of years ago and now I do. Break it down, make some contact into us, do a little bit of research on our website for some of the frequently asked questions, reach out to our registrant staff or their registration manager herself. Our information is widely available, and we're here to help. We're here to assist individuals through this process because we know it can seem like a concern for them, but we're here to help. So please encourage all of the PSWs in your association, and then those who may be joining us on this podcast or possibly at our town hall that are not, encourage those individuals to certainly look into what each of our organizations may provide for support for them.
And thank you for saying that, Trevor, because you really did lay it out really easily. I mean, I think the more times I hear you talk about it, the more it even becomes clear to me. It's not a daunting process to join. Pathway 2, the legacy pathway, I'm going to get into it. Obviously, this is for PSWs that have graduated before 2014 that require their employer to fill out a form that will identify them, that they have all the skill set that they need, and then they can become a HSCPOA registrant. And I know a lot of PSWs that okay, so I'm just going to break it down. So, we get a lot of PSWs that are being told by, they state, and this is hearsay, their employer, their union, their best friend's uncle's fish's babysitter, that they have to go back to school in order to become a personal support worker again if they graduated before 2014. So can we squash that?
So I'm happy to provide some clarity to that point, and I know that it's a contentious one. Let me use an example individual, because I think a lot of people can relate if they can hear an example individual. So consider an individual, just a typical age, I'm going to say approximately 48 years of age, and they either received education in Ontario prior to 2014, or they were trained on the job by their employer, and they may have been a healthcare aide prior to becoming a PSW, and they have a great relationship with their long-term care facility, retirement facility, whoever their employer might be. Those are the two kind of ones that tend to have individuals that work in that space, in that example. And they would like to become a registrant of HSCPOA, and we would encourage them to do that. Pathway 2 is that spot for them to land, and it requires them to work with their employer. And if their employer or anybody else, to use your cousin's fish's uncle reference, is saying to them, "Oh, you must go back to school," that's not accurate. It's not accurate from this perspective in most cases, because if you are functioning as a PSW on January the 16th of 2026 and you have 600 hours of demonstrated PSW services that you provide in your employment relationship, your employer is asked to complete an attestation that says that you meet all the qualifications of a PSW and what you deliver in your daily routines. And that influence into your application into HSCPOA is sufficient for our purposes, because we have the assurances that you are demonstrating the qualifications of the requirement of a PSW in the province of Ontario. So to say that anyone who doesn't have formal education after July 1st of 2014 must go back to school is inaccurate. If an individual employer has concerns about the attestation, we would love to get in touch with those employers and make sure that there's a clear and definitive understanding of what's required by that employer in that situation. I will put a qualifier that we don't have the control to enforce what an employer does or doesn't do. That's on them. They can make those business decisions at their business level. But we certainly want to make sure they're making them on the most accurate information and interpretations of the Act and the pathways that they can. Because to send or to infer that a PSW leave their current employment situation, go back and take education, and even if they provide the assurances that they can return to the workplace, I think we would all agree that's a pretty big impact on a PSW at a stage of their life. So we certainly would want to encourage everyone to work within the options and opportunities that the legacy pathway provides to ensure that we get the most number of individuals that are transitioning into the pathway. And again, that pathway is until December 1st of 2027. So very much a point of our publicity and our awareness in the sector is the importance of that date, and the importance of working with those individuals, that is their option pathway to help them and assist them through their application process towards the registrant status.
Oh, absolutely. No, and thank you for clearing that up, because we get it all the time, right? And one thing I've learned about PSWs is every time that we say one thing, we have to repeat it, because they're so busy, and they, a lot of them might not see this, or, see it later on. And so I really want to squash kind of this mindset of a lot of PSWs where they're panicking. I do not blame them that they are panicking. I will tell everyone that we are definitely working with the Ministry of Health to try to find something that works for everyone. Because as a lot of you guys know, there was a lot of, not necessarily schools that were above board prior to 2014, because there wasn't a standard for the PSW program at that time, unless of course you were in the community colleges, and then there was a standard. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I will tell everyone that's watching that the Ministry of Health is nothing short of fantastic, and they are listening to what we have to say, what HSCPOA has to say about this matter. And I'm feeling quite positive that we can come to a solution that everyone will be happy with, because regulation at the end of the day, guys, is something that we've all been fighting for forever. We've all wanted to have this recognition of the vital role that PSWs play. And a big part of that is the public protection element. I mean, I can't tell you, Trevor, how many times we get emails and phone calls from our members where, we have a lot of bad apples, not tons, but enough bad apples where, they could literally get fired from one job as it stands right now, pick up, go down the street and get hired somewhere else. And we got to stop that because as PSWs, we care for the most vulnerable in our populations. And it's a vital and essential role in Ontario. And with the HSCPOA guys, it's going to be recognized as such. So we should all be kind of celebrating that on that fact. So I also want to make another point that Trevor had mentioned earlier is for your police record check. If you are joining HSCPOA, you can use your OPSWA criminal record check for your HSCPOA registration. So we have definitely confirmed this. It's a go. So OPSWA members, if you want to join HSCPOA, just go for it because you already have your criminal record check and you'll be able to just slide right on in into that registration role. So PSWs have also been asking us a lot, Trevor, about will this regulation of sorts help PSWs, improve our wages, our working conditions? That's always kind of an iffy question, but I just thought I'd throw that at you.
Yeah, happy to address it. So that isn't the scope of area of oversight that HSCPOA has to offer. But I can tell you that with the continued level of registration taking place, we are growing a database of information and of data that will help inform and influence future decisions either at the ministerial level or possibly through advocacy for, say, OPSWA or other PSW associations, that they can then look to data that can drive some of the influences that they may wish to promote and raise to concern. I think that we all can agree that Ontario's PSWs provide an extremely vital role to the fabric of healthcare in a variety of settings, and I'm celebrating the acknowledgement and the attention that this exercise is bringing to that. And I also just want to put a bit of a plug. You mentioned it about how the Ministry of Health is working with us and is positive in this space. I want to highlight that because as a regulatory authority, they could have actually put regulations in effect with a specific date without the voluntary side. They could have assigned a fee strategy to it on the inception, but they're taking, I think, a very tactical approach to dealing with this in a sensitive and caring manner to the many PSWs across the province, voluntary until mandatory when that is determined, no fees, and making sure that the pathways themselves are not intrusive. There is no examination on entry to the application process like other regulatory associations may have in place. So there's lots of influences that make this, I think, a really good and positive transition. And unfortunately, you're right. There are individuals that may be functioning in a PSW capacity that may not be adhering to the code of ethics of either your association or our code of ethics through HSCPOA, or just generally the care and attention that we would want our loved ones to be receiving. Through our complaints and investigations capacity, we would look to the individuals that are brought to our attention through a concern. We would do a very fair and appropriate evaluation of the situations that are captured in the concern. And at the end of it, if the situation warrants consideration about ongoing registrant status, we will address that. But if there is opportunities for corrective behaviors and learned additions or learned improvements in a person's delivery of care services, we're there to work with them too. So it's really a supportive and a cultured way of making sure PSWs and those valued PSWs that carry that title, they can be assured that individuals who don't really demonstrate the same level of care and attention and ethical care delivery that they do, there's a mechanism that will correct that behavior and strengthen the brand. I'm very much about the PSW in our healthcare setting and really understanding their brand and their impact that they deliver each and every single day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for saying that. And I am excited for data with HSCPOA because that definitely does help advocacy with the association and it will. So, I mean, I think, one of the other things we always hear from PSWs as well is they've asked, because like with the association, so I'm going to do comparison. So with the association, we do have a PSW advisory committee. right? So we get asked all the time if PSWs are going to, have a real voice in decisions with the HSCPOA, and I'd like to plant that in front of you so you can speak about that.
Sure, happy to do that. So HSCPOA's board of directors has no individuals that have a PSW background. And your listeners and persons who may be following this maybe say, well, that's a detriment. I would correct that and say it isn't. Because when those individuals form and adjudicate over the governance of the organization, they're not influenced in any direction. They're looking at the sheer merits of how the organization is going to serve its mandate, serve the expectations from the province, and to do so in an unbiased and uninfluenced manner. We do have a PSW advisory committee that is made up of PSWs and individual sector representation across hospital, long-term care, retirement, union representation, and also from community-based care services that influences and will have a voice to both support and educate the CEO and the board on matters that we bring to the PSW Advisory Committee for their consideration. So there is a place and a voice for influences in the sector, but not necessarily specifically in the governance of the organization. And if I could, I missed a part about your previous question I certainly want to highlight. We are hearing more and more that employers in the province of Ontario are looking to recruit HSCPOA registered PSWs. So becoming registered with HSCPOA does have an influence, could potentially have an influence on your marketability for your employment opportunities. I wouldn't say it's a direct one-to-one relationship. I don't know what that all employers or employers in your specific community may or may not land on this particular topic, but we are hearing that a lot of our HSCPOA registrants are having more options or opportunities for employment because of their registrant status. So I just wanted to also make sure that there's a bit of that in the current shifts that are happening in the employment side. We can't influence that directly, but we are hearing that employers are making that choice on their own. Now, if they're doing that, they're doing that with the ability to look to their labor force requirements, and if they can find a number and sufficiency of HSCPOA registered applicants, then I'm sure that's the decisions that are making. But each of them have to run individualized businesses with business models and staffing patterns. So I think there's still great opportunities for both those PSWs who are not yet registered to work towards becoming registered, and those that are registered will have those opportunities available to them. So I just want to put that in there too.
No, and thank you for saying that, because I actually was on TikTok live on Wednesday and we recommended that. I said, we also have that with the association, that a lot of employers are looking for OPSWA memberships because of our insurability of the PSW. But a lot of them now are doing, we want OPSWA and we want HSCPOA. So they're saying we want the association and we want the regulatory body as well, which is not a bad thing because the nurses have it. The doctors have it. Like this is the growth I really feel of the PSW moving into a position of professionalism and recognition for the vital role that they play. And yeah, there's going to be hiccups and there's going to be mountains, and there's going to be bumps and grinds along the way. But at the end of the day, it's really going to put that spotlight over top of the PSW, and rightfully so, with how long they've been doing this without any proper recognition. So I really appreciate the fact, Trevor, that you have such a passion for the PSW, and you and I always have our chats, and
Yeah.
the working relationship between us and you is fabulous. We are health system partners, as you are with many other organizations as well, but it's a really great kind of synergy because we both understand the PSW so well. And at the end of the day, we both have the same end result, and that is for the proper recognition of the PSW, and of course the protection of the public, really as well. Because at the end of the day, it's all about patient-centered care, right? It's about who the
Yes, it
PSW
is.
cares for. So I want to thank you for joining us again on another PSW podcast. Remember, everyone, we are having a webinar on January 28th, one at 10 a.m. and one at 6 p.m., where Trevor is going to be joined by some of his staff. I'm going to be joined by some of my staff, and we are going to be there to answer your questions and talk about both organizations so that we can also stop that confusion where it is, and also show you guys how moving forward, this is a positive for all PSWs across the province of Ontario, and of course, those in their care. So make sure to head over to our Facebook page, our TikTok, Head over to the HSCPOA page on Facebook if you want information more on HSCPOA. They are not hard to find, so make sure that you guys check them out and everything they have to offer. And yeah, remember, we're always around. We're here for you guys. If you have any questions for Trevor prior to our webinar at the end of this month, please feel free to reach out to us and ask those questions, and we'll make sure to ask Trevor and his team when we are on the webinar at the end of the month. Trevor, thank you so much for joining us yet again here on PSW Podcast.
Thanks so much, Miranda. And just through you to your listening audience or attendants, thank you to the PSWs in Ontario for the work you do each and every day. It's valued, it's recognized, and it's certainly impactful in the fabric of our healthcare system. So, a heartfelt thank you to you.
Well said. Thank you so much, Trevor. Thanks so much, everyone. And with that, we're going to say OPSWA out.